My name's Andrew. I'm an employment lawyer and HR consultant at THSP Risk Management. We provide HR and employment law advice to many different companies. The topic of today's talk is about bullying and harassment, majoring mostly on sexual harassment, and there are real specific reasons for that. Why are we focusing on Toolbox Talks? We see that as the best way to communicate to workers, employees throughout businesses in terms of policy, procedure, understanding what can happen, what goes wrong, what their rights are, protection, and what they should do if an incident arises, such as bullying, harassment, or sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a very topical matter. The law changed in terms of employers' duties towards sexual harassment in October 2025 to put much more emphasis and responsibility onto the employer. And one of those expectations is to demonstrate training. And training can be done through a multitude of matters, through e-learning, formal classroom training, a webinar, or a toolbox talk. And toolbox talks are deemed as a very good way of getting this communication through. Without further ado then, bullying and harassment. The stance on bullying and harassment, as it damages the working environment and can have a devastating effect on the health, confidence, morale, and performance of those affected by it. It's not just the people who are victims of the bullying or harassment, it's the people around, and in particular the perpetrator. Alleged perpetrators have a very significant emotional journey to go through. It may also have a damaging effect on other staff who are not themselves the object of unwanted behaviour, but are otherwise witnesses to it, or who have the knowledge of the behaviour existing. We'll explore that a bit more now. It's expected that all employees will consider their conduct towards other colleagues as aspects of banter, jokes, quips, repartees, those kind of things, little wisecracks, things, tricks that are done in the office, could all be viewed as bullying or even harassment. The difference of which we'll come on to in a second. It's the conduct that is received by the person on the end of that behaviour and others who witness that conduct. The company will treat every case of bullying or harassment very seriously. How can bullying and harassment affect you? Well, the company deplores all forms of bullying and harassment and will seek to maintain a working environment which respects employees' personal dignity and which is free from objectionable conduct. That is conduct that isn't acceptable, agreeable by the person on the receiving end of it. That's a very subjective test. Everyone is different. The days are different. Subjective conditions are so different. A person's response to be banter or harassment on one day could be very different the next day because of how things have moved on and external influences. Harassment, how it differs to bullying, is in connection to a protected characteristic under the 2010 Equality Act. That connection could be related to someone's age, someone's disability, their sex, gender reassignment, race, including colour, nationality, and ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, or belief. They are all acts that are protected as unlawful and may be deemed as harassment by someone's conduct. They're known as the protected characteristics. And where they come into consideration, it makes bullying a different consideration. Harassment also includes sexual harassment that include assault if physical. This is when the conduct by one person to another is of a sexual nature. It's really important to understand that. Acts of sexual harassment are really significant. They are probably the most severe and worst cases we have to deal with as a HR consultancy firm. A single incident can amount to harassment. It's not always obvious when behaviours might constitute harassment, but it's the responsibility of individuals to try to recognise that what is acceptable to one colleague may not be acceptable to another. And that might go from day to day. We've got to be perceptive of people's behaviors, their emotions at the time, if we are using banter or comments in a workplace environment. It's the impact of the behavior which is relevant and not the intention behind it. It's no defense to say it was a bit of fun, it was a joke. It doesn't matter. It's how it's received by that person that is important. It can happen to anyone, regardless of their gender, and occur between same genders, i.e., male to male, female to female. If an employee believes that they've suffered or are suffering any form of harassment and/or bullying, including harassment by third parties such as clients, customers, or visitors, then they should raise the matter urgently under the company's grievance procedure. If you're unsure what to do, then speak to your line manager or HR as soon as possible. Bullying or harassment is a disciplinary offence, and incidents will be dealt with under the company's disciplinary policy, which could ultimately lead to dismissal. Assault of any kind, which is physical, sexual contact and conduct, could be seen as a criminal offence as well. There are some key points to remember. Bullying and harassment means any unwanted behaviour that has the purpose or effect of violating a person's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment to that person who's receiving that conduct. It doesn't matter whether or not the effect was intended by the person responsible for the conduct. An employee can also make a complaint of harassment where they are offended by behaviour, even if it's not directed at them. The employee does not need to possess the relevant protected characteristics if they are offended by the conduct. The purpose of the conduct and reaction from the person receiving an act of bullying or harassment are largely irrelevant. It often takes time for the person to reflect on the conduct and overcome the shock of the conduct received or witnessed. So if they've not made a complaint about it or spoken to their line manager or HR in the immediacy after the event, it doesn't really matter as long as they feel at the right time they can bring it to their manager's attention. It's at that point that it should be taken seriously. Bullying and harassment happens in many ways, such as direct, it's in person, through social media, text, phone calls and messages, or through the visibility of indecent or discriminatory images, posts, shares or likes. There's a lot of this in the public domain at the minute. Gary Lineker, as one for the BBC, lost his job for anti-Semitic comments that he, according to him, did not intend to make, was unaware of the damage that it created, but took responsibility for it and left his position. Sexual harassment will always be taken very seriously to ensure that we can encourage a positive and inclusive workplace and culture. Under the Equality Act 2010, sexual harassment is defined as an unwanted conduct of a sexual nature and has the purpose or effect of violating someone's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for another person and can be directed at anyone. This unwanted behaviour could include inappropriate banter and name calling, making sexual comments or jokes about someone's sexual orientation or gender reassignment, making sexual remarks about someone's body, clothing, or appearance, touching someone against their will. Hugging them is not going to always be wanted conduct. Asking questions about a person's intimate or sex life could be seen as sexual harassment. Displaying or sharing pornographic or sexual images or other sexual content. And most seriously, sexual assault or rape of all forms of sexual harassment that are attached to the workplace environment. The company will treat every case of bullying and harassment very seriously. As a heads up, and as I interluded, the law from October 25 required employers to take positive steps to eradicate sexual harassment. It would be looking for policies to be in place, such as an equal opportunities, bullying and harassment, code of conduct, social media, whistleblowing, and of course, disciplinary and grievance policies. Training is expected in any form, could be e-learning, classroom, online training, more in depth for senior executives, Toolbox Talk training for workers and employees in the workplace are a good way of demonstrating a commitment to this law to eradicate sexual harassment at work. There are a few questions that come up, and I appreciate if nobody has the opportunity to pose a response, but a few questions to reaffirm this understanding. So who can be affected by bullying or harassment? The answer is anyone, even as a witness. What is sexual harassment? The conduct is of a sexual nature. What should you do if you receive or witness bullying or harassment? It must be reported as soon as the person feels comfortable to their line manager or to HR. Leave it to them to take the appropriate action. What could happen if bullying or harassment is proven? It will certainly be taken seriously, investigated, and potential for disciplinary action.